Hey everybody, so I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Those were some exciting talks this morning, but now we're going to switch to crisis, which can be a little more exciting, I guess, maybe. Anyway, so I just recently switched to the product team. I've previously been the engineering manager for big data, and I was a project manager for them as well for the past 2 years. Big data works on Fresh Web Explorer, just discovered links, Mozscape index, like Phil was talking about. But before coming to Moz, I was actually a developer and a manager at AT&T Wireless for a front-end rich media team. So I've worked across a lot of teams for the past 6 years, and I've learned a lot about communication. One of the biggest things I've learned is that making sure that you're keeping good communication across teams in the difficult times is really, really important and really hard. So CrossTeam Communication can be tough even when times are good. Engineering, product, marketing, we all kind of talk different languages. Engineers, they really love the numbers, they love the facts. Product, marketing, they love words, they like describing things, they like talking. And when you're in meetings with the engineers, they can get a little frustrated sometimes because they just want the facts, they want to go build the cool stuff, they just want to get it done. So when things start burning down and things are going to hell, how do you keep up that good communication across all your teams? So today I want to share with you guys some of the lessons I've learned along the way. First of all, I think we all try and practice good etiquette in our day-to-day lives, especially when it comes to email. Some of the things just in general I like to keep in mind is to make sure that you're using your subject line as a headline. You want to set that expectation for people when they're going to open up an email. Like, is this urgent? Is there a deadline associated with whatever you're emailing them? Let them know, like, do they need to review something by the end of the week? Or is it something that they can put off, like, you know, unicorn cats or something like that, that they can read whenever they want? But make sure that you're setting that expectation in the headlines so that that person has to read that email knows exactly what's expected of them. Another one to keep in mind, and this one I have a really hard time with, but you want to keep your emails on topic as much as possible. Sometimes you get so busy, you got 1,000 things going through your head, you want to just dump all those thoughts in one email, save yourself time, and get done with it. But that sucks for that person who has to open up that email. I'm a big fan of the getting things done methodology, so my inbox is like my to-do list, and I'm going to go through all my email. If I can do it in 10 seconds, I get it done, otherwise it goes on my to-do list. If I get an email of like 5 unrelated topics that I'm going to have to like synthesize through, it's going to take me a while, I definitely put that on my procrastination list, and I usually don't get back to it for a while. So just keep in mind, if you want a quick response from somebody, try and keep your emails on topic as much as possible. And the third thing to always be aware of is your tone, which I'm really bad at this sometimes. I love sarcasm, but it doesn't always translate that well with email and instant message. I think we've all probably learned that at some point. So when things are going to hell, that's when our communication skills really get tested. You can pair code, you can test your software as much as you want, but inevitably you're going to end up with that stupid obvious bug that ends up in production that nobody sees until you have like 20,000 paying customers having access to it. So how you as a company deal with these types of situations is what's going to set the good companies apart from the exceptional companies. And I want to share with you guys today 6 of the lessons that I try and keep in mind in these types of situations. Number 1, everyone makes mistakes. It's going to happen. So when mistakes happen, pointing fingers and placing blame is not going to get you to solutions any faster. Having a culture that values transparency is a huge advantage in these types of situations. It creates a really good feedback loop so that your engineers and your team can jump in, start investigating, and start trying to solve the problem without that fear of blame or getting called out for something. So I know a lot of you guys have been our pro customers for a while. You might remember the crawler outage that we had about 2 years ago where our crawl diagnostics, we lost a whole bunch of campaign data. I was a project manager at the time, along with Thomas and Bryce. We were hanging out on a Friday night, it's like 7 o'clock at night. All of a sudden, we see all these alarms going off. We jump online, and we notice that your crawl diagnostic data in some of the pro app campaigns was just disappearing. So we jump on, we investigate, and it didn't take very long to figure out that there was a misconfiguration in the way that we'd set up the database to store all that campaign data. We'd set the database up in the cloud, on Amazon Web Services, on these machines called Spot instances. And they're really inexpensive, great way to run machines in the cloud, unless you're storing important data on them. They're really cheap when demand is low, but when demand gets high, you get outbid for them, and the machines just disappear. So we're running into the holiday season, And we started getting outbid for the machines, but we didn't have the proper monitoring on the machines, and well, we shouldn't have had the data on the machines in the first place. So we figured this out pretty quickly. We knew what was going on, and me being the project manager, it was my job to jump online and let everybody know what was going on. So I had to email our help team, our community team, as well as the managers, the E-team and RAND, and let everybody know what was happening. And instead of the E-team jumping in and being like, what the hell, how could you guys do this, how could this happen, which would be a totally fair reaction, their first reaction was, what's the customer impact, how can we get this fixed as soon as possible, and how can we communicate this to our customers? And so since we don't have that culture of blame and finger pointing, that allowed our engineering team to jump online, try and fix this, and it gave Bryce the freedom to get this blog post up so we could tell everybody what was going on. I think he ended up getting this up at like 2 a.m. on Saturday morning, which it was a rough night. So number 2, have a dedicated email distribution just already set up. You want to include the people who are going to be directly responsible for maintaining your quality products and communication on this distribution. Don't include your entire engineering team. Don't include your entire marketing team if your marketing team is that big. A lot of times they're going to see these emails come through and they're going to get really used to ignoring them if it's not affecting their team. But as soon as you know what team is involved, loop them in right away. And if you're not sending them a bunch of extraneous emails, they'll see these kinds of emails come through, they'll know they need to jump into action, and they'll know to prioritize these emails. Number 3, clearly define what constitutes an emergency. Making sure that everybody has a clear definition of what an emergency is will create that urgency that you need when these types of situations come up. And for you guys, what defines an emergency is going to be different. But for us, we've settled on this. If our community or our help team sees 5 emails or 5 tweets come through in 24 hours about the same issue, they know to write an email out to the engineering team and be like, hey guys, this is what's happening. Can you guys jump in and investigate what's going on? On the other hand, if our engineers start to see any operational issues or something going on with one of our features, they know to jump online, send an email to our community help team so that they can tweet and let the help team know that, hey, you're probably going to see an influx of tickets, we're investigating the issue, here's how long it's going to take until it gets fixed. But the most important thing to remember is to hold that definition up across all teams. So you want to make sure that every team has the same definition for what that emergency means. That way that anytime anyone on any team sees these emails come through, they know to prioritize them above all the other hundreds of emails that they have in their inbox. So Lindsay Wassel, she's one of our associates on the East Coast, and I don't think she even knows this, but when I was an engineering manager for big data, I would wake up every morning, make my coffee, 8 or 9 in the morning, and go through my emails looking for emails from Lindsay. And since she's on social media like 3 hours before the rest of us, she knows if Homesite Explorer is down, she knows if the Pro Dashboard is down. I'd scroll through, I'd find out what's going on, I could prioritize my day and know if I'm going to have to call an engineer at 8 or 9 in the morning to wake them up. You want to make sure it's really an emergency if you're going to wake an engineer up that early in the morning. They're not going to be very happy with you. That's happened. And number 4, this is probably the most important thing. Clear and concise email is really, really crucial. If I got an email like this and I have it in my inbox, it's going to take me forever to synthesize through all this information. Like, I can't clearly tell what the problem is. I don't know who's affected. I don't have any clues to start investigating. Like, what teams do I need to initiate? Who needs to start investigating this stuff? It's going to take me a long time to read through this email and actually figure out what's going on. But looking at an email like this, you can skim it, you can see it really quickly, stuff pops out at you. One of the things I like to keep in mind is to make sure that you put your conclusion first. So you want to make sure that the first thing a person reads when they open this email is the most important information. And I got this great piece of advice from an old manager, Kate Matsudaira. She always said to keep that conclusion to 2 or 3 sentences because as a manager, you're always running from meeting to meeting trying to prioritize your email on your iPhone. And if you can see that, that conclusion in the previous screen on your iPhone, you're going to know to prioritize. So when I was in a million meetings all day long, I'd be scrolling through my email trying to figure out, okay, emergency's coming through. Is it my team that needs to get involved in this or not? Can I follow up with it later? So keep that in mind. Another thing is to take advantage of bold, italics, underlining, color. Don't go overboard because it won't work, but just make sure that it's really easy to skim these emails, that somebody doesn't have to read this word for word to know exactly what's going on. You want the most important information just sort of pop out at people. And this is the most important thing. This is all your engineers care about. All the engineers want to know is how do you reproduce the problem? And I can't stress enough how important it is if you're going to write any sort of emergency email, make sure that your engineers know how can they reproduce that problem in real time? The only way that they're going to be able to investigate this is if they know who's affected, they know, they see screenshots of it. They need those step-by-step way to get into the user, be able to reproduce that problem in real time, and begin to investigate what's going on. And the last thing to keep in mind is make sure to call action items. Don't be afraid to ask a specific team to jump in and help you, or maybe even someone specifically on a team. We do this all the time with Erica and Jen. When we know something's going on, we'll be like, hey, this is happening. Can you tweet out to the community and let everybody know? But don't be afraid to call people out. If you just send out an email and say, hey, this is what's going on, people might think to jump in or might think somebody else is going to jump in and take over. So don't be afraid to just call it out. Take that question away from them and let them know, they'll be happy to jump in and help you probably. So number 5, set realistic expectations both internally and externally. You want to provide a really open communication internally with your teams as well as externally with your customers. Even if it's bad news, your customers are going to be able to deal with bad news better than no news or overly optimistic deadlines. In the case of the crawler outage, this was a really shitty situation. We lost a bunch of crawl data on these machines, and we knew it was going to be at least a week before you guys were going to have crawl data back in the app, and we knew it was going to be weeks before we could replay all of your historical crawl data. We had to completely rebuild this entire database. And so Jen Lopez would try and get on as often as possible and update Bryce's blog to let everybody know what was going on. It was really bad news, but all we could do really was just be honest with everybody and let them know what was going on. And some people appreciated this. Jonathan Coleman, who's really active in the community, transparency, he appreciated it. Shit happens. People understand that. But then, some people are going to be upset, and that's to be expected. These people are paying you for a service. They're expecting this service of you. And when you have problems like this, you're affecting their day-to-day life. So making sure that you're empathetic and that you're keeping open communication to your customers. You want your customers to know this, and you want your teams to be aware of this as well. But make sure that you're being empathetic. We messed up with this. In the case of the crawler outage, we promised a fix, and we missed that deadline. But not only did we miss the deadline, we didn't communicate to our customers that we were going to miss that deadline. And so they were upset, and it's really fair. So in these types of situations, you get really stressed out, things are going crazy, you get really busy. But just remember that the communication and empathy is really important. And empathy to your team as well. This is affecting your customers, but it's also affecting your engineers. In the case of the crawler outage, we had a couple engineers that were up for 7 days straight trying to rebuild this database. So just keep in mind, this is your customers, this is your team. Empathy and honesty is the best thing you can do. And finally, take time to follow up with a postmortem. Unfortunately, a lot of times postmortems can be used as a way to sort of cover your butt or maybe place blame, sadly. But they can actually be a really good learning tool, and it's a really great way to build confidence back within your team. Postmortems are super simple. You only need 3 things. You just need to let everybody know what exactly happened. Get everybody on the same page so everybody knows exactly what the situation was. And let them know what the action items are, let them know what you're going to do in the future to make sure this never happens again. And with that, number 3 on the bottom there, make sure that you're including those action items. Make sure that people can see what steps you're taking to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Some things that I like to try and keep in mind when I'm writing postmortems, like I said, make sure that it's actionable and educational. Otherwise, it can look like a way to place blame. Also, try and use we's as much as possible. In these types of situations, it's rarely ever one person's fault. And even if it is, you definitely don't want to call them up. They're going to call them out. I mean, they're going to feel awful enough as it is. So as a manager, you want to try and accept the blame as much as possible. But if you can't, make sure that you're using we's in the communication about the problem. But make sure that you call out everybody that jumped in and helped out with the situation. This is a really great way that you can build positivity back into a really negative situation. So how can you guys take these lessons back and apply these back at your company and in your teams? First off, start small. If you don't already, try and encourage transparency in your teams. Make sure that your team knows it's okay to make mistakes as long as you're honest about it and you communicate. Everyone's going to make mistakes. And 2, practice that communication. Writing email is hard and it sucks and it takes a lot of time. So practice that during the good times. Practice communicating with your customers during the good times, and it's going to be a lot easier and a lot more natural when times get tough. Thank you.